Hello and welcome. Nichols PLC, ticker symbol NICL, is the business behind a number of popular beverage creations, most notably the classic soft drink brand Vimto. Now, Mark took a position in the company a few years ago, and he recently attended their 2026 AGM to see how things are going. Now, Vimto is mixed with water, and Mark is currently underwater with his investment. But despite that sarcastic comment from me, he remains confident that the business has a promising future. To find out why he feels that way, stay tuned to this, episode 47 of The Desert Island Investor. This episode of the podcast is generously hosted by Progressive Equity Research. Visit their website at progressive-research.com. So, good afternoon, Mark.
And it's a good afternoon to you, Paul.
Okay, so to get started, can you please start off as usual by giving us the base numbers for Nichols?
Nichols has a market cap of 344 million, a yield of 3.6%, and a PE of 13.9, and that's based on the current share price of £9.55.
And have you traded in this stock since we last covered it back in June 2024?
Yes, I made one addition, which was in August of last year, at £12.12 and a halfpenny. So that is an obvious underwater addition at present.
Right, okay. So as regards conviction, where does this stand in the portfolio?
It's currently in 15th place out of 31 holdings, and it accounts for around 2% of the portfolio.
Okay, right. So partly the reason we're covering Nichols, ticker symbol NICL, is that you recently attended their AGM.
This was my first Nichols AGM. They are based in Newton-le-Willows in Merseyside, which is the birthplace of Rick Astley. Never Gonna Give You Up. Do you want me to sing that one, Paul?
Please don't.
No, okay. So it's only 28 miles away from Darwin, so very much in my backyard compared to the vast majority that take place in London. I do attend some in London, but being from the Northwest, not only is it cost, but it involves a lot of logistical effort. So I have to spend some days in my own bed.
So was this at their offices or at a local hotel?
No, their offices, straight off the motorway, and it was very easy to find.
All right. Now, I came with you to the Halstead AGM, which was well attended, but you have previously said that some are pretty Spartan. So was this one well attended?
Yes, I guess 40 or 50 in the room, although it's hard to establish who are the shareholders, advisors, staff, etc. However, as an aside, I recently attended the Genuit AGM in Leeds. We're not including the board. I was the only shareholder, Paul. That's never happened before. I've had it where there's been one other shareholder, but I was the only shareholder.
Wow. Okay. Not a great turnout there then. So what was the format of this one?
Their offices, they're modern offices. They're very plush. There was lots of Vimto branded items in reception, a man-sized bottle of Vimto by the door, branded cushions on the seats, lots of old Vimto advertising boards from yesteryear. They have the marketing resource, Paul, something that you would have been salivating over. And then they had a bar, kitchen area with pumps, nibbles, orange juice, some fizz, and of course every flavour of Vimto in the range. And this is where the board were mingling when we arrived. And the AGM was at 11 a.m, which is probably an ideal time for most people to get there and get home as conveniently as today's motorway network will allow us. The chair, Liz McKeekin, introduced herself to Elaine and myself, and she asked about my investor profile and my Nichols history, which she found interesting. And her CV reads, just a bit of background on Liz. So, Custodian Property Income REIT, Senior Independent Director, Fresca, Non-Exec Director, McBride, Senior Independent Director and Remuneration Committee Chair, Delata Hotel Group, Senior Independent Director and Remuneration Committee Chair. Unite Group, Senior Independent Director and Remuneration Committee Chair. JD Wetherspoon, who you know, Paul, Senior Independent Director. CH&Co, Non-Exec Director. Flybe, Non-Exec Director and Remuneration Committee Chair. Moat Homes, Chair. Speakers Committee for Independent Parliamentary Standards Committee, Independent Lay Member. Direct Wines, Non-Exec Director. Network Rail, Chair Membership Selection Panel. Child Maintenance and Enforcement Commission, Independent Member Remuneration Committee. Civil Service Commission, Civil Service Commissioner. Insolvency Service, Independent Member Steering Committee. Tesco Stores Board Director. And a partridge in a pear tree. So I think it's fair to say Liz knows her way around the boardroom and has unscrewed a few bottles of mineral water in her time.
And was there a new CFO in office?
Matthew Rothwell. I think he had only been in situ since the 13th of April. The AGM was only 8 days later, so a bit of a baptism being voted on so quickly, but all resolutions were carried comprehensively. Interestingly, this was all by a poll and not a show of hands. As I've said before, a first AGM as a private investor is very often much a fact-finding and reading the lay of the land. Matthew was previously Deputy CFO at THG PLC, what was known as the Hook Group, but he's held positions with Booths, Sainsbury and Asda, who are all stockists of Vimto, so it's a useful CV.
Right, now the business was founded by John Noel Nichols in 1908, and the Nichols family have 2 family representative directors on the board.
Well, in all my time, I've never come across this, but in 2020, the company and Nichols family, who at the time owned 34.7% of the company, entered into a relationship agreement, and this is it. It says the purpose of the relationship agreement is to formalise board representation for the Nichols family, whilst also ensuring that the company is capable of carrying on at all times its business independently. In accordance with the terms of the relationship agreement, for so long as the Nichols family retain 1, an aggregate interest of equal to or greater than 20% in the issued ordinary share capital of the company, they shall be entitled but not required to appoint 1 non-executive director, and 2, an aggregate interest of equal to or greater than 30% in the issued ordinary share capital of the company, they shall be entitled, but not required, to appoint 1 further non-executive director to the board. So the Nichols family is currently represented by John Nichols, who stood down as chair in 2023. He's 76, and his son Matt, who serves as the commercial director. So both able, I would suggest. This company has been in existence for nearly 120 years. So it would be hoped that within the family, they can always find somebody with the requisite skill set and not have to put forward a kind of George III figure. There again, I would imagine if there was nobody appropriate from within the family, then they could nominate a candidate from outside to represent them.
Now, when I attended the James Halstead AGM, there were 2 Halsteads on the board. And with Titan Holdings, they previously had 3 family members on the board, Keith Ritchie, John and Tyson Anderson.
Well, family-founded businesses that retain a significant shareholding have significant control with nominations to the board, and it's unsurprising that family members are often groomed and selected. Me Group, which is another of my holdings, they have announced a deputy CEO, Vlad Krasniansky, and he's the son of the current CEO, Serge Krasniansky. I'm sure that Vlad was the standout candidate. Often significant shareholders who are not family members are invited or seek positions onto the board, and I think in many cases this is perfectly justified. They've got skin in the game and a vested interest. And MP Evans at Kuala Lumpur, Kepong Berhad have over 24%, and they have a representative on the board. So sometimes with these appointments, it's like keeping your friends close, but your enemies closer, and perhaps you're better off having somebody in the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in. Where this differs is that there's an official arrangement in almost tablets of stone.
Okay, so were any questions asked?
Well, our chair talked through the format. Then Andrew Milne gave us the trading update and added a little what people call colour. There was just two questions, one about organic growth, but that was preceded by my question. And it was that I asked, well, every AGM deserves a silly question, and I'm going to ask it. And it's a lovely day, and I have just had a couple of refreshing glasses of Vimto. And many years ago in the paper industry, I worked for a mill that manufactured bottle label paper, and the demand was always higher in the summer. And when we had good summers. So I was asking, with global warming, is there any data or evidence that as a species that we're getting thirstier and this being a tailwind for Vimto?
So global warming. You're really trying to take advantage of an oncoming Armageddon.
Paul, as an investor, you're always trying to adapt to the world as it is and not as the world as you'd like it. We look at the trends around us. The world is constantly changing, and we have to look where opportunities arise. And it's sad to see the decline of the newspaper industry, but I wouldn't want to invest in one. So although there's no hard research, Andrew, our CEO, said that certainly we do sell more products with warmer weather. I then asked a follow-up, and if we were seeing a tailwind through the decline in alcohol sales, and this was more of a definite yes. They're particularly targeting the 18 to 25-year-olds, and this will be where the basis of any acquisitions that we look at.
So aside from your question, just two questions from such a large audience, that doesn't seem very good.
Well, the whole official thing lasted about 15 minutes. Now, when the meeting broke up, I stayed seated awaiting a chat with the directors, and one old boy who was walking out said to another man, quite disgruntled, well, you'd have thought somebody would have asked about a share buyback. Well, you asked the question. The chair gave every opportunity for questions from the floor, and there's too much of this being shy, unduly reverential, and leaving the workload for another shareholder to do. We get AGMs we deserve broadly. And if one shareholder, say myself, is hogging the floor, then this sometimes looks like you're just trying to hold court, and it's better if the workload is shared around. To be fair, things are going very well, and there seems little to pick at. But if you've got a question, then ask it. Anyway, I had a pleasant chat with Andrew Milne and John Nichols in tandem about John's granddad. He was born not far from me in Blackburn, but the business started in Salford. Then there's more about navigating the various business cultures in their markets and their partnerships and their agencies. And I said that in Mauritius, there are McDonald's and KFC popping up, which is such a shame as the street food is so good and affordable. But I think the Mauritians see this as we've arrived and enjoying the Western trappings, and there's an element of a status. But interestingly, Vimto is that well ingrained in the Middle East that they see it very much as their own product, which is useful. Then there was some history on how they withdrew from production and how it's very much an asset-light model, which fruits an adjusted return on capital employed of 34.1%.
Now, Nichols sell in over 60 countries, but the UK is still the bread and butter, accounting for 75.3% of sales. So let's take a look at that trend of reduced alcohol intake and hopefully replacing it with, amongst other things, Vimto.
Well, an article in The Guardian, of all publications, I don't like to admit to this, but it said that the average adult consumption was 10.2 alcoholic drinks per week. And that's the lowest figure since 1990 when the data was first gathered. It did stand at 14. Now the trend is down more due to more moderate drinking than people not drinking at all. So the population, but I'm referring to the indigenous population, is aging, and they can't consume as much as they did. Now, on that part, I know that you're bucking the trend on that. But since September, I've made a conscious effort to cut back on drinking at home to the point where it's almost non-existent. And I describe myself as a moderate drinker, but almost everybody does. But this is on health grounds, and I just found myself being a little bit more alert, really. I still drink in social circles, but these are limited, and I do drink when I'm on my travels. It's always been difficult for me to, when I'm asked to give a number of units, as I've never had a kind of set pattern. And I would say I've replaced that in-home alcohol drinking with more tea, coffee, Coke Zero, milk, the odd Guinness Zero, and of course Vimto. Now, Vimto has a market of some significance in the Middle East, and it's often consumed at Ramadan. Interestingly, they still have a glass bottle out there, which I think is partly because of the heat. I don't think plastic would fare very well in very hot countries. Now, the vast majority of Muslims do not drink, but of course, in the UK, we have a rapidly growing Muslim population. And this was 2.8 million in 2011, and in 2021 that had increased to 4 million, and I'm sure it's increased since. And this is growing due to a combination of immigration and higher fertility rates. Now, I was reading an article from EQI, which is a Muslim think tank, and they have produced a document entitled "A Teetotal Britain: Learning from Faith Communities." Now, this was published in November 2025, but the data is from 2018, so it's a little dated. And the percentage of non-drinkers in the UK are given as follows. So white British, just 9%, mixed white and black African, 22%, black African, 48%, Bangladeshi and Pakistani, 90%. Now, I was surprised that there's as many as 10% from that community that drink. And it's much of a contrast to when I'm in my local bar in Mauritius, where several of my pals, Bashir, Nawaz and Ismit, to mention three, and some other regulars, they like a drink. And I also understand that there's a large number of Muslims in Mauritius who drink in the confines and secrecy of their own home. So we don't know where this trend will go, whether more Muslims in time will consume alcohol, but we're in a large part several generations in the UK, and abstinence has remained. And I've spoken with several UK Muslims who I mainly know through cricket, and they do often drink Vimto, but it's alongside a myriad of other soft drinks. Vimto is not a standout, but these people are from families from the subcontinent and not the Middle East. I do find a few through cricket who enjoy a lager or three. But besides religion, there are other drivers for people not drinking as much: health and cost. And with pubs, it's increasingly an older person's pastime. And just on that, I just go into one of the Darwin pubs, the Crown, as they just had the Vimto introduced on the mixers. So I did patronise it. And, with pubs, there's a smoking ban, and as young men, these are places to meet girls, but increasingly, this is done via the internet. So we have to remember that, people who drink alcohol, it's not the only thing they do drink. It will be alongside other fluids. But Paul, I'm just wondering, have you any thoughts on the decline of drinking?
Yes, I think it's a good thing. It leaves more for me. So Ramadan moves forwards every year. So how does this affect Nichols?
Well, whereas Christmas is every 365 days, always on the 25th of December, if nobody knows that, Ramadan moves forward 11 days every year. So its seasonality is always changing slightly. So there'll be Ramadans in blazing sunshine and also in deep snow. And this can have an effect on stocking, planning and logistics, and on reporting. And Ramadan will move gradually from H1 to H2 and then back to H1. So comparators need to be scrutinised. And in the case of Nichols, their financial year is the calendar year. Now, in 2030, there'll be two Ramadans, the first on the 5th of January and the second on the 26th of December. So perhaps gaining two sales in a financial, unlike if it was occurring in June or July. And the 2-year Ramadan will not repeat for another 33 years. And this will be falling near Christmas, so this could stretch logistics with the demand.
And statistically, Vimto is the number 2 squash brand in the UK, I believe.
Yeah, it's not bad being number 2. You have somebody to chase. Robinsons are the number 1, and I still heavily associate them with Wimbledon, despite that sponsorship deal ending in 2022 after some 86 years. Our CEO, Andrew, used to work for GlaxoSmithKline, and on competitor brands, they owned Ribena, which is your cordial of choice, Paul. but also Lucozade, until they were sold to Suntory in 2013. And do you remember that Lucozade glass bottle wrapped in crackling orange cellophane, Paul?
I do indeed. Yes, my grandmother would always have a bottle of Lucozade somewhere around her flat, and yes, I've had. I was only given that if I was ill. Basically, I don't think it wasn't like handed out as a sort of a soft drink, because it was. That's what it was originally designed for. Because people who are unwell benefit from that kind of glucose hit. But yeah, I quite like Lucozade.
Mm. Anyway, subsequent to the AGM, Elaine and I went into Manchester, and I was on a shopping excursion. So I really splashed the money. I bought a new sun hat and a battery for my Casio, and then we had lunch in Happy Seasons in Chinatown, where we've been, Paul, in the past, and drinks in the Circus Tavern and the Britain's Protection. However, as it was our 35th wedding anniversary, as a special treat, I took her to see the Vimto Monument at Vimto Park, and that's apparently on the spot where Vimtonic was first created back in 1908, when the temperance movement was in full vigour, and various drinks emerged out of this. And the monument is made out of oak and consists of a giant bottle with ingredients of grapes, blackcurrants, and raspberry. But anyway, as a coincidence, en route, Elaine and I were engaged in conversation by a man stood on the back of a tail lift of his van, asking if we wanted some free cans of Vimto Energy. And this guy was called Howard, and he explained that they were part of a promotion. So we had them a few days later, went home, and we had them in the fridge, and I must say they were very refreshing. And we just mentioned Lucozade, and I remember when this was something that was sold in pharmacies, and you'd take it along to a frail aunt in hospital. Now now it seems to be targeted at people who've just done a gym session and sold very much as an energy drink, and it just seems to me a great marketing pivot, and it's a massive market. But you're the marketing man, you're the supremo. What's happened, Paul?
The kind of glucose energy drinks are really good for people who aren't very well, as I've just said, and also for people who are engaged in reasonably energetic sports. So they are arguably targeting both of those markets with their marketing, and introducing the smaller bottle was great for the sports people, so they can take bottles of Lucozade to the gym. Unlike the bottled water industry, which I am less favourable of their marketing tactics, because they have simply made millions and millions of pounds out of claiming that people need to drink 8 glasses of water a day, which is absolute nonsense, apparently. Medical opinion is the fact that you do not need to do that. But they seem to have successfully convinced people that they do. So you get thousands of perfectly healthy young people walking around with bottles of water strapped to their hip. And of course, then if you go on LinkedIn, there's lots of environmental people complaining about plastic bottle litter and how we need to spend millions getting some kind of return scheme or improving recycling. But what they never seem to do is actually blame the people responsible, which is the bottled water industry, who've created basically an artificial demand.
Mm. Well, we're both men of a certain age, Paul, and we've got on our okay with corporation pop, haven't we? Now, I don't take vitamins or supplements, but rely, rightly or wrongly, on what I believe is a balanced diet. Cordials like Vimto and your Ibina, Paul, are a source of vitamin C. Is that enough for you, Paul?
I just take a multivitamin, to be honest with you. I like fruit, so I eat some fruit.
Yeah, good for you, Paul. Anyway, apparently before citric fruits, sailors used to consume sauerkraut. So I bet they were glad to get away from that.
I'm sure they were, actually. Yeah, although I do like sauerkraut. Sauerkraut's very nice if you have, bockwurst sausages I have it as a kind of German tea sometimes with some Weissbier. It's very nice. And sauerkraut's nice with that. It lasts forever as well. You stick it in the fridge. Now, Nichols have introduced a new line targeting breakfast markets. I was talking about orange juice, I believe. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's called Vimto Wonder Fuel. I've never thought of cordial for breakfast. It's probably probably going to be targeted as a cheaper equivalent to fresh fruit juices. And apparently a 250 milliliter glass provides a third of the daily nutrient intake for vitamins B, C, and D, and is a source of iron and zinc. Now, interestingly, 10% of consumers are new to the squash market, so it's not just cannibalising their existing sales. Now, I've tried the summer berries, which I've got here now, a glass of it, flavour, which I found quite refreshing. There's also mango and orange and apple and blackberry. Now, I'm still not sure if I would drink it at breakfast. I feel there are morning foods and there's afternoon foods, and I do have a sweet tooth, but I wouldn't have anything sweet before noon. And but perhaps with these cash-strapped households, with children, Wonder Fuel could be a cost-effective alternative to fruit juices. It's interesting how Nichols are attempting to extend the range of the day of their product. This is something that Wetherspoons have been very successful in with the breakfast and a place for cheap coffee. And another of my holdings, Greg's, again with coffees and breakfasts and pushing into that evening trade. Now, Paul, you've said that you don't like Vimto, but I have asked you to try the Wonder Fuel. Which flavour did you try, and what's your verdict? And are you now full of vim and vigour and running around like an infant?
No, I'm afraid I'm not. Not because it didn't have any effect. It's just I couldn't find any. I was in Asda yesterday, and they hadn't got any. And I sent you a picture of it in Morrison's about a week or so ago when you asked me to track it down. And they had a lot of ordinary Vimto, but they didn't have that. But they do sell it online. I went on their website, and I think it was their website or a supermarket website, and you can order it online. But no, I'm afraid I wasn't able to acquire any.
Well, I must say I'm disappointed on that, Paul, because you did send me that picture, and there were some other cordials there: orange and pineapple, mango and passion fruit, mango, strawberry and pineapple, cherry, raspberry and blackcurrant, raspberry, orange and passion fruit. I mean, this is another thing. It doesn't seem to be one flavour now, where it's lime, orange, or blackcurrant. There seems to be a real assortment, but none of those were. You weren't tempted to try any of those either, were you?
No. Well, as I said, I think I said to you at the time, and if you go back and if anybody wants to go and listen to our previous Nichols review back from earlier, I said right at the outset, I don't really like Vimto. So I wouldn't have bought a flavoured Vimto. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I haven't tried it, but I'm assuming it just tastes like if they had something called orange and mango, it's just an orange and mango drink made by Nichols with the Vimto brand on it.
Mm.
So I'm assuming it doesn't taste like Vimto.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
but it might. So, wasn't prepared to take the risk, Mark. Sorry about that.
Okay, mate. I fully respect you there.
All right. So you mentioned Robinsons earlier, and they were owned by Britvic, who were taken over in 2024 for 3.3 billion.
Yeah, interestingly, by Carlsberg, a beer company. So you can perhaps see the alignment between beverage companies where alcoholic and non-alcoholic sit side by side in an offering. And of course, if you're a UK investor and want exposure to soft drinks, this is one less to choose from. There are still, of course, Nichols, but also AG Bar, who manufacture Iron Brew, and Fever Tree.
Right, getting back to the investment angle, Nichols have changed their dividend policy, I understand.
Yeah, Nichols have good cash, perhaps too good. They've held 59.8 million, up from 55.7 million at the year end, and they've changed their dividend cover. That's how much they pay out in dividends relative to their earnings, and this has gone from 2 times to just 1.5. So that means a hike of a third going to dividends, as the board have established that they feel they've got sufficient cash buffer to meet their day-to-day needs.
We mentioned that the UK is its biggest market, and you have said that you're increasingly looking at non-UK earnings within your portfolio. So what are the sales spread?
Well, the UK is 131.9 million, which is 75%. Africa, 22 million, which is 13%. Middle East, 12 million, which is 7%. And rest of the world, 9.2 million, which is 5%. That includes the US and Europe, so some enormous potential there. And US sales were up some 23%, albeit from a low base. Vimto was introduced to Malaysia in 2024. So that's somewhere I visited last year. I didn't see any Vimto, but people increasingly have money to spend there, and Vimto is available in 3,000 Malaysian stores. And Nichols have 3,522 customers. So I'd say they've got good spread and diluted exposure.
Right, so despite all the above, as you already said, you are underwater on your last purchase. So has this put you off at all?
Well, I think there's lots of positives here. I can't see Vimto disappearing. There's still new markets to target and new products, and it's generating great cash. And looking at the portfolio, my portfolio, it looks like I might be losing Intertech to a takeover. Unilever are rolling their foods business in with McCormick. There's chatter of a bid for Magnum. And there's the Zytronic solvent liquidation going through. So very quickly, I could be losing some holdings and looking to flesh out some others. So anyway, with that, I'll let you get back to experimenting, making your own desert island Vimtropic. I thought you were going to call it, Paul. And I think your last effort was up, coconut water, wild berries, honey, parrot droppings, and goat sweat. And I think it just needs a little bit more work yet, Paul.
Right. Okay. Well, yes. That's the plan, and I will keep an eye out for Wonder Fuel again. I mean, they're probably still in Tesco's. I mean, Tesco's. You sent me a photograph of the soft drinks aisles. I mean, there must have been 4 aisles full of soft drinks at Tesco's, and we haven't been there for a while. So I'm pretty certain they'll probably have it tucked in there somewhere amongst the other 1,000 different flavours of fruit, juice and water they've got. But we'll have to see. I will report back if we cover Nichols again. In the meantime, thank you very much for that review. Well, that's all for this episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. Please remember the content is for information only and it is not financial advice. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.